Marty Campbell, Auckland Local Secretary. Thanks, Kerry. Thanks, Russell, for coming up this morning. This is one I've asked a few times. I know it's a favourite one of Ian to ask, because I think it's kind of the crux of a lot of the problems that we've got with the organisation. Now, we're 5 years into Fire Emergency New Zealand since we were established, and there's a little section called Section 21 Local Planning. It's an obligation that is put on the organisation to actually do. When is Fire and Emergency going to get round to engaging with unions and stakeholders about those obligations around the Section 21 local planning requirements? Because I think if we had that sorted, a lot of the issues the problems that we've got wouldn't be resolved, but there'd be some sort of forecasted plan of when they would be resolved. People would see, okay, it's an issue now, but okay, we can see the organisation is actually going to be doing something about it in 5 and 10 years. So I'm keen to know is when's the process going to start, and how sincere is the process actually going to be? Because as we've seen previously, the consultation and engagement we've had so far with other issues has been pretty much tokenism, and there hasn't been actual much real engagement. So, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy to take this. I think local planning and I'll call it previous guises was things like national resource allocation model, national risk resource modelling as well. So I think historically the organisation has tried to do stuff in this space, and largely, simply put, it's how do we come up with a good system, process and data to really understand community risk and then apply resourcing solutions to that risk, right? And that, if you want 5 different opinions, get 4 different people in the room on that topic. So that's the challenge. So the organisation has had that, the New Zealand Fire Service and then FENS up to a point. And then the local planning section in the Act kind of leaps out at you. And clearly, from my way of thinking, what we've done in the past isn't fit for purpose for the future. We've had, I guess, a number of conversations here, but we haven't nailed it yet. We haven't really engaged in, well, what does the system need to look like? But all I can say is I am keen to engage, and I'm keen to restart that work, because otherwise it just becomes up to sort of local solutionising, if you like, and there's a piece of land in Drury, let's buy that, without sort of really robust and consistent approaches nationally. And so the challenge that I have is that region managers or business operation managers are off sort of doing their own, let's do a strategic network plan for this city or town, but that it's not consistent. And they'll do their best in terms of, we think this is the data that creates the evidence that then generates a solution, but it will be inconsistent. I may or may not agree with it, you may or may not agree with it as well. So I've come to the conclusion that this is a sort of a multi-branch, this is a partnership thing between my branch, service delivery, we're sort of critical to it, org strategy and capability development, that's where the sort of the policy thinking and the process thinking sits, and then the finance and business operations, which is where the data and analytics thinking and capability sits. And so I'm trying to corral the leaders of those branches to let's go back to this concept of local planning and understand what it means.
Of course, I hate for you to forget the unions and the firefighters that have a very valuable knowledge on what the community and the risks look like. And I guess at the moment, Section 21 would allow FENS to put their hand on their heart and tell the government that they are actually producing value for money and they are protecting the community in a measured and evidence-based way. At the moment, I don't think you can say that because we don't know. We don't know what it's going to cost to run the organisation properly. If we undertook the local planning, then you'd have to put your hand on your heart and say, actually, we are doing the right thing.
That has been and still is the perennial problem, like when I was on the New Zealand Fire Service, and it remains, is how do you tell, for example, the government our value story? That if we didn't have this sort of capability and capacity here, some bad outcomes might have occurred. There are many variables as to what will drive a bad outcome in a house fire, for example. And sometimes it's about us and what we do, sometimes it's not. It's about what the occupants did before the fire started or after the fire started. So that is a perennial challenge for organisations like ours, to be able to tell a valid value story. But again, I don't disagree. I think if we get this local planning thing right, it will enable us to tell that better value story.
Ian, if I could just,
Sorry.
I was just going to say that that's all very good, but we're coming up 6 years since the organisation started, and granted, you've just come into your role now and you're taking on a lot of that stuff that was some of your previous role. Why was this not a day one priority for the new organisation to come hit the ground running? Obviously, the people that wrote the act back in probably 2014, 2015 had some sort of planned understanding of what they wanted the organisation to do. Why was that not a priority from day one? It could sort of be at least something established in those first few years that would give us a lot of the groundwork, and it would have hopefully prevented some of the issues that we're now in.
I think it's easy to look back now and challenge the priorities put in place for the organisation as you move through. But it's like I often say, people sometimes underestimate the complexity that we went through bringing the organisation together, and all the different challenges that sat in there. And I was just saying at the UPA conference last week, what is fire and emergency? You can say, you would give me an answer and you might say something like, we're an emergency service that provides emergency services across New Zealand, and you'd be right. Someone else might say, actually, we're one of the largest property management companies in New Zealand, and they're right, we are. You could say, we're one of the largest, providers of fleet across the country with the size of our fleet, and they would be right. We're one of the largest, if not the largest, volunteer component organisation in New Zealand, and we are, they'd be right. So there's many different views that you look at when you look at what fire and emergency is, and they're all valid, and they're all different, and they all need to be balanced. So when we genuinely bring the 40 different organisations together, the decisions of the organisation at that time was around the need to build a rural, because there was already a urban, but there were, figures, there were 39, 40 different rural entities operating in different ways, different levels of investment capability. Not all of it came over to Fire and Emergency New Zealand. It didn't come with any back office to support that into Fire and Emergency, so that's where the focus was. It wasn't, you can say we're moving into our 6th year, but we're also only September last year that we stood up our district structure, which is a key component alongside that in the local planning as well. So there's lots of decisions along the way that have been made, rightly or wrongly. People always do it in the best intent and what the context is of the time. And that's what I say now, our focus needs to be on intelligent-based decision making, and that is about local planning, so that we've got those things in place, because that's the next iteration of our journey in there. So yes, you can critique the priorities put in place in the past as we've moved through those periods, but they're done, they're gone. That's happened, and we're now at a junction, whereas it's what's the next steps that's important. And I think what you're hearing from Russell is that recognition. I just want to say one thing before I come back to the question back, is that when I looked at the structure of my ELT, it was a very purposeful decision to split service delivery, and it was also a very purposeful decision to put the director's role of operations in place, because I wanted to make sure, firstly, around the operational leadership table, or the executive leadership table, that we had, by design rather than chance, we had operational voices sitting at that table. And also, I actually wanted to create the space for Russell in particular to actually be able to work across the branches rather than down into the business and getting pulled down into the business. And I can tell you from moving from that role, the ability to actually get across all the branches was so challenging, to connect it all up, to make sure that service delivery voice and focus is clearly heard and understood, to align all the different pieces. So putting that extra capability in there with Brendan gives Russell the ability to connect all those pieces up to make sure that we're travelling in the right way, but also has the focus within his team to ensure we've got the capability to look down into the service delivery and deal and change with the challenges that we have going through them. So that was part of the design of this one.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Russell. I'm going to have to, just closing on that, we're ready and willing anytime.
Oh,
Pull
and
the
look,
trigger
I'll
on
put a
local
plug in
planning, we're in.
for this guy. He keeps the pressure on, you can rest assured. We've had many and we'll continue to have many conversations.
Yep.